So I have for you guys probably the biggest video on my channel to date, and the reason why I'm calling it the biggest video to date is not because I'm building an Instagram clone, but because I'm going to be showing you guys all of the tools that I use to build production ready applications and my preferred stack. So to show you these tools, I decided not to build like a to-do application. We've built to-do application like a million times. I'm tired of it. So I decided to spice things up a little bit and build something a bit interesting to show you these tools. And that's why we have an Instagram clone today. So it's just a very minimal Instagram clone. You can do the basic things of Instagram. Like right here, I have listed an image. We can log out. So let me log out first. So this will be the beginning of the screen for a user that has not registered. As you can see, we have the login page. And if I don't have an account, I can click on the register link. And here I would have to fill in this form. First of all, my first name, last name, email, and the password. Click on create account, and that should spin up a new account for me. And now, what are the actions I can actually do on this application? Well, I can create a post, which is like the baseline for Instagram. Click on the create post button right here, and I have this modal telling me to drag a photo on videos or select from computers. So I can do it both ways. I can select from computer. If I click on this button, we have this right here, and I can select this open. We preview the image at the top here, and I can write a caption for it. This is a bus. I don't think that's a truck. This is a bus, and I'll submit by clicking enter and give that a second. And once it's uploaded successfully, the modal closes and we have a new post from Adebola, which was the account I just registered. And the caption says, "This is a boss." And I can click on the Adebola's profile to see all of my posts. And I only have one post right here. I can create another post, but this time I'm going to drag and drop so I can show you that functionality as well. I would open up my file explorer and I'll drag and drop this cat in here. And I'll say this is a cute cat, and I'll submit. And as you can see, it updates the number of posts that I have. I go back to my home page. You see, we have this one first, and the caption says this is a cute cat. And we can also do some other nice things, like I can set this to dark mode, which is just a cool thing I added. Doesn't really relate to the stack or anything, but it's just nice. Yeah, the main purpose of this video is to teach you this stack or introduce you to this stack and show you a way to build applications way faster than you usually do with the other stacks like the main stacks and all that other stuff. I call this stack the perfect abstraction because of it abstracts just the right amount while leaving enough for you to do so that you have full control over what you're doing, and if any bug arises, you're able to take care of it. It doesn't abstract too much to the fact that you don't know what's happening, that it's almost like magic, but it doesn't abstract too less to the point where you have to do everything. It's just like this perfect in between, and that's why I call it the perfect abstraction stack. And the perfect abstraction stack would not be the perfect abstraction stack if the UI library that we were using was not Svelte. So Svelte is the basically the foundation of the stack. So without this, the stack is not the perfect abstraction stack. You can switch a couple of other tools on this stack for something else, but you can't switch the UI library, Svelte. And when it comes to using Svelte, we always like to use sveltekit with it. And the reasons I bet you all know. So this particular one can be switched for, I know Astro as a Svelte implementation, but I prefer to use sveltekit. And when it comes to sveltekit, we want to use an authentication library. Now there are a bunch of them out there. Probably know Auth.js and the rest. I like to use Lucia Auth. And Lucia Auth is, in my opinion, the perfect abstraction for authentication. It's not just a drop-in authentication tool where I should just drop it in and it works. Yeah, a lot of things you're going to have to configure by yourself, but in enables you to like understand what is going on. If you're a complete beginner, you've never done authentication before, at the beginning it might be a little bit hard, it might be a little bit weird for you. But as you build on Lucia or you understand authentication strategies and all those things, and it makes you a better developer. And when building these applications, it's a full stack application, so we need a database. And I swear on a Postgres database, but it's pretty kind of tough getting production ready Postgres database, like deploying it and handling it, scaling it, and all this other stuff. So there is one tool that I love for Postgres databases, and that is Neon. It does a lot of this thing for us out of the box. It's a Postgres database that you can provision database for you in less than 1 second, and it's extremely cool tool. And when we are using a Postgres database, we need a way for us to query the database and to do all those cool stuff, mutations and all that stuff. And that is where an ORM comes in. Now, a lot of you will know Prisma, which is a very popular ORM. A lot of you will know Type ORM, but the one that I use is Drizzel because, again, following this stack, the perfect abstraction. Drizzel doesn't take too much from you, whereas you don't know what's going on, like Prisma, but it doesn't give you too much to do, whereas you are writing pure SQL at that point. So when you're using Drizzel, you kind of have to know SQL, so which is kind of nice because of that is transferable knowledge. But if you're using something like Prisma, you're pretty much writing Prisma syntax. Even if you move from Prisma and you don't know SQL, you're going to have some issues there. Now, when moving things from our application to the database, we need a way to validate our data. We need a way to make sure that we are receiving the data that we need, and that is where Zod comes in. Now, Zod again fits perfectly in this perfect abstraction stack. And when using Zod and sveltekit, we also have a library called Superforms that works perfectly for forms, and it's by far the best form library out there for any UI library. I beat my chest on that. It only works for sveltekit, yes, but there's no UI library out there for any framework that beats Superform implementation for client side and server side form validation. Now let's move to the UI library that we'll be using. As you guys know, if you watched past my video, this is probably the only UI library I use, chassis and svelte. Again, it fits perfectly in this perfect abstraction stack. You can edit the components to your liking. You have some styled components just out of the box, but if you don't like the way they are, or you have a specific design you want to go with, you can just customize this to the way you like them. And since we are building an Instagram clone, we need a way to serve images properly, and that is where Cloudinary comes in. Now, Cloudinary is a CDN that we can use to serve our images in an optimized manner, and I'll show you guys how to do that as well. And I like to use fonts from font source as well. Now, this one doesn't really, it's not really part of the stack. I'm just showing you guys that this is where I get my fonts from, and we will be using a custom font from font source because they give you an extremely nice way for you to add fonts to your application. Now, there's actually a lot more to this stack. We've not talked about testing and a whole lot more, but see, we're already about 10 minutes just for the introduction, and I don't want this video to be too long. Like initially, I wanted to be just a pure app because I didn't want the video to be too long, but I decided to go with the Instagram clone. So in order not to waste any more time, let's start building this application. So what I want you guys to do, first of all, head over to Chassis and Svelte. This is their guide. We'll be following. So I'm in the Chassis and Svelte documentation at this point. I'm going to slide through to their installation, choose sveltekit, and we would follow this step right here. We have the sveltekit CLI right here to create a new sveltekit project. I'll go with PNPM, go with whatever you want to go with. And I'll open a new Windows for VS Code, paste that in, changes to Instagram clone. We'll be going for the skeleton project. Down and enter. Now they said add type check-ins with TypeScript. I always recommend TypeScript, but I see some people always yell that they are beginners and they don't want to be having to disturb themselves with types and all that stuff. So you can go with JavaScript if you want, but I'll just go with TypeScript. And I'll add ESLint, I'll add Prettier, and I try Svelte 5. Personally, I only build with Svelte 5 at this point, whether it's stable or unstable, doesn't bother me. Svelte 5 all the way. So enter as well. Now let's go back to the other steps. Add tailwind CSS. I'll copy this. Paste that in. Now you see I made a little mistake. So I'm still in the tutorials directory and it's telling me you want to create a new project. I'll see no now exists, but now I'll cd into Instagram clone. Now I'll run this svelte ad one more time. And now it doesn't ask me to create a new project. So do you want to use typography? No. And which am I using? I'm using PNPM. I'll copy the last one to install the dependencies. Svelte add has installed Tailwind successfully, and I want to believe that when Svelte add installed Tailwind, it's also installed everything on my package.json, but just for good measures, I would run pnpm install one more time to see what comes up. All right, so everything is up to date. That's nice. Now I want to open that workspace directly in VS Code. So I'm just going to show you guys how to do that. I don't like adding anything from you. Click on open folder. I'll go to tutorials and I'll go to my Instagram clone. Yeah. Select folder. Now we have it right here. You should see something like this in your Explorer as well. Open your terminal, Control J, or on Mac that will be Command J, and then you spin up your dev server with the npm install or whatever you're using, npm or whatever. Just the dev script is your package manager, then install. Sorry, I said I really said install. I meant dev. Yeah, so pnpm dev, not pnpm install. That was my bad. So once you execute this command, it should spin up a dev server for you and spit out a local host URL that you can view your project from. So give mine 1 second and you should spit it out soon. Yep, right here. So this is what it looks like. Localhost 5173. I will just control click on this and it should take me there and run it directly there. So you can see we have welcome to sveltekit, blah blah blah. And that would be what we have in our routes plus page just felt right here. Now I'm not going to go on explaining routing and explaining these folder structures. I've done this like multiple times, and at this point I'm creating a sveltekit series that I'll be explaining all of this in depth, so you guys can watch that. We're just going to be focusing on building this application. So next thing I want to do is actually install the chassis and svelte dependencies. So I'll go to the 5th step and pnpm right here. I'll open a new terminal and I'll just spit out that command in this terminal. And asking us, would you like to use TypeScript? If you choose JavaScript for that your initial step, you'll go with no. But for those of us that went with TypeScript, it's going to be yes. I'll go with default. I'll go with Slate, no problem. After CSS, yes. Correct. Yes. Just keep on clicking enter, 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 and you should be good. And after all of that is done, you should go ahead and install the dependencies for you. As you can see, it's installing dependencies. Now all the dependencies should be installed. And what I want you guys to do is go to your extensions tab right here and search for chassis and svelte extension. It's a very nice extension that gives us snippets for chassis and svelte. So I'm just this one right here, chassis and svelte. Install it and it should be good. By Solomon Dev. Alright, so let's actually begin by building out the home page. But first of all, I want to change something. Remember, I said that we are going with Svelte 5. So in Svelte 5, we don't use slots. I know a lot of, a lot of you don't actually like the children stuff because the slot stuff is just a lot faster and it works. So if you don't want to change it, you can leave it. But I'm just trying to be religiously Svelte 5. That's why I'm going to use children. And what I did right here is just change the language to TS because I'm using TypeScript. If you're not using TypeScript, just ignore this. So come below here and I write, let's open curly braces, children is equals to $ props. And I can use the render tag to render this. At render, now render a snippet of children. Now this is basically equivalent to the slots that we saw previously. There's nothing new here. Now before we just continue, I want to increase mine. Yeah, so you guys can see better. That's a lot better. Now in this route, I'm going to create two group routes. I'll create one for our authentication pages or authentication routes and another one for like the main page and the main page route. Now we create group routes is by using parentheses. So I'll open parentheses and I'll see the first one should be app, and I'll open another folder in the routes, another folder, and I'll call this one inside parentheses as well, Auth. And I'll move this plus page right here. I'll move it to the app. Right here. Now everything should remain the same. If I go back to my browser, see that nothing changed. If I refresh, nothing changed, still the same. In group routes, we can actually have layouts for them. So I'll create a layout file for this app group route plus layout.svelte. And in here it's going to be very similar to what we have in the root layout. So I'll copy this and I'll remove the things we don't need. Like we don't need this one right here. I'll get rid of this. And the reason why I'm creating a layout is because we're going to have a sidebar that's going to be shown in all of the pages except from the ones on the authentication pages like the login and register. And this is a very good technique of doing that. So I can just create a layout inside this group route, place the sidebar right here, like sidebar, and it will show for every page inside this app, but it won't show for the pages in the Auth. So it's just very nice economic way of doing it. And that sidebar is going to be a component. So go to your libs folder, and in your libs folder, just create a sidebar. And you want to create the sidebar component inside the components folder. Just write in the components. I'll create a new file called sidebar.svelte. And it needs to be a svelte component, so it starts with capital letter. And I can start this off like this. And this div, I'll change this to aside. Nice. And in this aside, I'll just write in sidebar. I'll save this. I'll go back to my layout and I'll import the sidebar right here. If you check your browser now, you should see the sidebar show at the top. So sidebar. Good. Go back to the sidebar in the sidebar and let's begin building the sidebar. Now I want to divide my screen, so I will divide my editor to one side and my browser to one side. Now I'm going to get rid of this text without actually needing this welcome to sveltekit anymore. Save, and that should disappear. Good. The first thing I want in the sidebar is the Instagram logo. And what I've done for you guys is I have created this icons folder with a bunch of svelte components that are just SVG icons for us. Yeah. So you can check on the description below. I have the link to the repository on GitHub. You can go there and you can get the complete code, and you can as well just get only the icons if you want. And make sure that you star the repo so I know that you visited. So I'm just going to be using this right here, and I have the icon or the logo right here. This is what I'm going to use. So I'll go back to my sidebar, and in here I'll have a div. Give that div some classes. Let's say my8 pl3, and inside that div I have another div, and this div would have the logo inside it. But this div is going to have some classes because I would want to hide this logo some places on a different screen size. So On the smaller screen size, it's going to be hidden. And we'll give the width of it. And from the medium screen to the larger screen size, it's going to have an inline block. And this aside as well is going to have some classes as well. So we'll just say fixed because of we want the sidebar to be fixed. When we are scrolling, it doesn't move. So we give it a position of fixed. And flex, it is height of full and the minimum height of the screen or width of it. And flex cool or border, sorry, of right. So we have the border at the right. Save this. You really won't see anything because of I don't actually have any content in the sidebar yet. But we can give this a BG of background and a padding of 3 all around. And from the medium size, we give this a width of 244 pixels. Now, once you've done that, I want you to come below the year, just after the div covering the logo. We'll have another logo. This time it's going to just be the Instagram logo. And this Instagram logo is going to be from what do you call it again? Lucid Svelte, I believe. And that is what Chassis and Svelte uses as icon library. So by default, Chassis and Svelte hasn't yet downloaded it. The only time it's going to install it is when it's using the component that needs it. But we need it now, so we're just going to install this. How I would install it is very similar to how we install every other package. npm add lucid svelte. Make sure that I spell that correctly. Yep. Some terrible spelling. Okay, see, I didn't spell the ad correctly. I knew I was gonna mess something up. So the ad doesn't have 3D. And once that has installed, you should be able to get it. But if it's not like coming up autocomplete stuff, just reload the window. And once you do that, you should get your beautiful auto import. Now you see Instagram. It's just an icon. And if you haven't noticed what we are doing, let me just go to the full screen so I will explain it. So here I'm saying that on smaller screens, I don't want this logo to show right here. That's why we're having this hidden. And that's why on the screen right here, we can actually see that logo. But if I go to the larger screen size, you can see the Instagram logo actually showing. But if I go to the smaller screen size, it doesn't show. And for this, I want something very similar. So I'll say on the larger screen sizes, I don't want this one to show. MD, and I'll give this hidden. Now I can save this. Let me show you have that stuff added. Now on this screen size, you will see the little Instagram logo show up. And when we increase the screen, you'll see the other Instagram logo show up. Now we're having an error, and this error is probably going to be because of we just installed Lucid Svelte. What you can do is cut your server and run it again. Now, as you can see, we have the Instagram logo showing up right here. And if I go to the bigger screen, you see the bigger Instagram logo showing. That was just what we were trying to achieve. Now, out of the word div, covering both logos, let's go below that, create a new div. This is where we are going to render the list. So give this div class flex 1 flex column and a gap of 2. And in that div, we're going to have an each block that's going to iterate through an array of objects. But first of all, let's create this array of objects. So we're going to call it sidebar item. Come above here, const sidebar item will be equal to an array, and the first one is going to be text. The text is going to be home, And we'll have icon, and the icon is going to be the home icon that would import from the icons folder. And we'll have the href, for the home is going to be slash. And we can just copy and paste this one a couple of times and just replace their values. And for the second one is going to be slash, and slash is not going to have a link, so get rid of the href. Third one is going to be explore, and explore is not going to have an href as well. But also remember the icons. Remember to change the icon. So the explore icon is going to be just explore, and the search icon is going to be just search as well. Next one is going to be Reels, and Reels will not have any link. The icon is going to be simply Reels. Next one I'm going with would be messages, and it won't have any link as well. And the icon will simply be the messenger icon. And the next one will be notification. So notification, and the icon is going to be the notifications icon. Just add an S to the notifications right here and get rid of the href. And we'll have the create, and this button is going to be the one to actually pop up the modal create, and the icon is going to be the new post icon. This is the only one that's actually different from the name, and we'll get rid of the href. And the last one is going to be the profile. The text is going to be profile. The icon is going to be circle user, and this circle user this time is going to be from Lucia svelte, not from the icons folder. And the href is we're going to programmatically get this, but for now just leave it as slash. Good. Save this and go back to inside that div, and let's iterate over this list. To do this in Svelte, we're going to use the h block. This is how you define the h block. And we're going to iterate over the sidebar items. And we just destructure them right here. We get the text, we get the icon, and we get the href. That's why I don't like using Copilot, because it just throws a bunch of rubbish for you. Now inside here, we can basically get all of the text. So if I put a p tag right here and I render the text, save this, you would see all of the text rendered right here. This is very easy. You can see it doesn't give you any stress, and it's very readable as well. So that's very nice. But we just don't want to just render the text, do we? What we want to do is actually something very, very smart, because of, if you notice right here on this list, we have a couple of things that are actually very different. So for example, we have the first object here is a link. It has an href, right? So this one is going to be a link, and the rest of these don't have href, so they shouldn't be a link tag, right? And then we have this one right here, which is not just a link tag, it's going to be a button that opens the modal. So as you can see, they are pretty distinct and they're pretty different, and trying to get this to work would be actually very difficult, but in Svelte, it's not. So what you would probably want to do is create each of these individually and give them what they want. They don't just want to iterate over this list, because they have pretty different functionalities. But in Svelte, it's actually very easy to create this. So I'll show you a very smart way to go about this. So what I'm going to use is the svelte element. This is a special svelte tag. Use the svelte element. And in here, in the svelte element, we can tell it what element this would be with this. So with this equals to, and we'll check if there's an href first of all. So say href, if there's an href, that means this element is going to be an e tag, right? So that's very smart. and then now check again if the text is equals to now while looking at the create tag. So if the text is equals to create, that's for this one right here. So if the text is equals to create, then we want it to be a button because it's going to be a button that will click and would open a modal. So that's we want this to be a button. Else, if it's none of this, we just want it to be a normal div. Right. So that is pretty, it's pretty crazy that we can actually do something like this. But yeah, we can. And I'll save this. And what I'm going to do actually is go full screen because if I notice that my it's starting to wrap over and you guys might not be able to see it properly. So yeah, what I will do is just render out the text one more time in here. And I'll save this and go back to my browser. And what we'll do is we'll inspect this. So we'll see what you actually get from all of this. So for the home page, for the home, we see an A tag because it's a link. It should be an A tag. And for the remaining down here, we see divs for them. You see? And for the profile, we see an A tag. And for the create, we are still seeing a div, which is wrong. So how am I going to fix that? Is I believe it's because this is a capital letter. So I'll save this. And that should fix it. Now, if I go to create, you see that create is now a button, right? Isn't it? Because it's in a button, it centers it. But we'll fix that. But as you can see, create is a button now. So now let's think about the links. The links, they have an href, and we need to pass href. So what we can do just is shorthand property, paste href right here in curly braces. So for the ones that are an A tags, it's going to give it an href. If it's not an H tag, it's going to completely ignore it. I would save this and I'll check the browser one more time. Go to the home text and we see that it has an href of slash, while the divs, they don't have an href because they are not A tags. And the button as well would not have an href because that's not an A tag. And this A tag as well, profile, has an href as well. So that's very smart, and you can see it's very easy and simple to just get this done. Like it's crazy. So one thing I want to add here is for that button, I'll give this a role of none, just for accessibility reasons. And yeah, I'm gonna give this class. We'll go with, let's cut this first of all. Yeah, and I'll go with flex. Pretty much all our elements are always flex. And I'll say cursor pointer, item center, gap of 1, rounded MD, padding 3, all round, text of SM, and make this capitalized. I'll say over, that's when this is over, say a BG of muted. So what you want to do now is save that and go to the browser. As you can see, this is what we have now. Let me close the console. Looking very, very similar to the Instagram sidebar at this point, but we are not yet done. Go back to your editor. Now let's render out the components. And we have another special tag in svelte to render svelte components because of these icons are not just SVGs. They are actually svelte components, and the SVGs are inside the svelte component. So what I can use is the special tag svelte component, and I would reference the icon inside the svelte component, and I'll give it a size of, in fact, let's not give it a size. I think the size is okay the way it is, and we can just save this way, and we can check the browser. And as you can see, the svelte component gets rendered, the icons get rendered. And if this is your first time building with svelte, you'll have noticed that it's actually a very enjoyable experience building with svelte. And it's just one of the reasons why I say that for these stacks, svelte is not an option. So let's continue, right? I want to give this a on click, and that on click is going to be for the dialogue. But for now, let's just ignore it because we are not actually there yet. What I want next is to make the text bold, but for only if we are on the home page. And what I can do is do the active link stuff, but I'm just not going to do that. What we'll do here is just have a div, and in this div, I'll put this text in there. And this div will have class, some dynamic classes. And for us to do that, we'll use CN. Now, CN is going to be created for you by CN spot, and you can just easily import it from your utils folder. So I'll come here, CN. As you can see, lib/utils. Click on that. Now open my parentheses, and in here I'll write my base styles. ML4. Say hidden on smaller screens, and MD inline block. And for the dynamic class, that is for if this is the home text, I want this to be bold. So I'll just put parentheses right here. So font would be bold if the text is equals to home. And I didn't spell bold correctly here. Bold right this, save this. This should give us what we want. Now let's just refresh. And I don't think we are getting the results we should be getting. Let's just take a look at this. You know what? Let's increase the width so we can actually see this. I'll say black. Save. Oh, it's actually working. It shows that bold doesn't make that much difference, but whatever. Bold. Come on. Now, before we move on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to add your own custom font. Because Instagram doesn't actually just use any font, they use a custom font. But I'm not bothered about the fonts that Instagram is using. What I'm bothered about is showing you how to add fonts when you want. We're going to be using font source, as I said in the beginning. And I'm just going to be using the Intel font. That's the font we are going to be adding. The reason why I'm going to use this is because it's a very nice font and it's also a very good font. So search for Intel and then click on it. You'll see the install guide right here. Click on the install guide. And yeah, I'm going for PNPM and I'll copy. Open my terminal and I'll install that. Once it's installed, close your terminal, go back to the guide and see this import right here. Copy it. Go back to terminal. Go to the root layout. So the very root layout and paste it above your CSS imports. And after that, you go to your tailwind config. Just scroll down to where you see font family. You see we see font family right here. And at the top, the first thing in the array should be your inter variable font. And this one is just spreading all other font from the sound. So we'll put right here a string inter variable. Now this one was spelled correctly the way I spelled it. Inter with a capital letter I and variable with a capital letter V and the space as well. And since this is an array, comma, and we'll save this. And I'll go back to my CSS file. Make sure that this font has been added. I'll say the body text. It's not actually text, it's font. Sound. Now by default, it's actually the font sound that's added, but I just want to make sure that it's there for good measures. If I save all of these files, go back to my browser, you see that the font changed a little bit. And that bold font is now more noticeable, the H1. The home page, I mean, the text is more noticeable. Just the difference you get with Inter. And you can choose any font you want. Actually, it doesn't really matter. Just try and make sure it's a variable font because they are better. Now we'll go back to the sidebar. We're not done with the sidebar yet. Now the rest of this actually do their job. Like all of this. This one is a link. This one is a link. And this one's a this. But this one is a button. And this button we want to give it an action. Like when we click on it, we want something to happen. And that thing we want to happen is for this to open up a dialog. And we're going to install the chassis and svelte dialog first of all. And remember that extensions I told you to install, that chassis and svelte extension. So if you've installed it, you can just open your command template by Control P and then go to unsigned or Control Shift P. And then you can search add new components, chassis and svelte. Click on it, and it will give you a list of all the components in chassis and svelte presently. And we'll just go for dialog. Click on dialog. It would paste the command to add the dialog component for us, and it would add it. But if you didn't install that extension for some reason, you can just go directly to the documentation and copy that CLI. I say ready to install, yes, and it's going to install the dialog for us. So it's successfully installed the dialog. And another thing that extension does for us is it helps us paste in snippets. You can go with CNX dialog and it will paste in the dialog snippet for me. And to actually even get the imports as well, come above here, CNI dialog, and to paste in the imports for the dialog as well. So it's a very handy extension if you're using chassis and svelte. Now we want to customize a bunch of this. This is not how we want it to be. For the title, we are going to go with create a new post. And the trigger, we'll get rid of the trigger. We're going to programmatically open this modal. So we'll get rid of the trigger. In the dialog context, we give this a class. That's going to be a maximum width of 450 pixels. And we don't actually need the description for this dialog. Get rid of this. Here we would have a form. Yeah, so that's enough. So as I said, we're going to programmatically open and close this modal. So I will do that. We can just bind to states. So I'll come above here. Let me just close this up. So below this cons here, we'll create a state room. I'll call this let's open modal. If you can find a better name, use it. And this is going to be the state room. So it's going to be $states. And by default, it's going to be false, but because we want to see the modal and do what we want to do, we'll say true. Because if it's false, we won't actually see the modal. And on the root, we can just bind to that state. We can say bind open is equals to open modal. And we'll save this. And once we save this, go back to our browser, you see that modal opened by default. Now I'm going to divide my screen because of as we're building this modal, I want to be seeing it. Now the next component from chassis and svelte that we're going to install is going to be the form component. So very similar. Open your command palette and type in add new component. We'll go for the form. And it's going to install sveltekit super forms, which was what I told you about. It's going to install form snap, which is going to be some component version of sveltekit super form, and it's also going to install Zod. Those three dependencies all in one. So click on that. I will just give that a second to install. Once it's installed all of that for you, you can close your terminal and you want to import the form. I will CNI form. I divided for the modal as well. And we should be able to import it like that. Going back inside the form, we're going to be using form actions to actually modify the database, i.e. create a new post. So for the actions parts, we're going to be using a named action. So slash, the action is going to be on the home page. So we're using slash and then we use our question mark to state that we want to write a named action here. And the name would be create post, like so. And because of this form would be allowed to collect images, we'll give this an n type of artifact from data. That part is actually very important. Now, once you've done that, you can come inside the form tag. Let me just increase. This is starting to look pretty confusing, so let me increase the real estate of the editor. Yeah. And in here, we're going to have a div. And this div would just have class of grid, height of feet, or place item center. And in this div, we'd have a div and an input as its children. And this input is what we're going to use to actually get the files. So let's actually focus on the first child, the div. So we'll give this div a class. Sorry. That should be an attribute. So class. We give this absolute space y3 and text center. Just so that you can see better, let's go full screen. And in the div here, inside it, we'll have another div. The amount of divs we use. And give this div a class mx auto, because what I want is that the item inside this div should be in the center. So mx auto and width would be fit. And the item I'm talking about is going to be media. So I'll say MEDIA. And this is going to be an icon. So it's going to be from the icon component, the media.svelte file. So I'll just import that. And I'll save this. And I'll check the browser. So you can see the icon actually showing right here. This icon right here. So that's nice. Let's format that and go to the inputs. But before we actually focus on the inputs, let's add some couple of things more inside this div. So outside of the div that is covering the media icon, we're going to add text here. It's going to be that drag and drop text. So drag photos and videos here, and we'll have a button. So this button is going to be from chat and svelte. I'll do CNX button for it to give me a snippet of a button and come above here and do CNI button. And you might be wondering if we've installed the button, but when we install the dialog, it's installed the button. So we don't actually need to install the button again. And I'll give this a size of SM. I'll give it some classes as well. I'll say BG blue 500. And what we can actually do is, since this is our primary color, place this in our CSS variable right here, the primary variable right here. But I'm not going to be doing all of that. You can easily customize yours if you want, but we won't be bothered about that. Now for the text, just say select from computer. From computer. We'll save that. And as for this input, what we want now is that if we click on this, like this from computer, we want this to bring out a Explorer modal, or if we come and drag and drop it inside here, we want it to work as well. So the way we're going to achieve both of that is going to be actually very easy. So for this input, we just say the type should be file, first of all, and we want this to accept just a few types of file, and there's going to be images. So say image slash png, comma, and image slash jpeg. So just two types of image files, png and jpegs. We'll save those, and we'll also give this a name. The name is going to be image URL. Doesn't make that much sense, but just leave it as such. And for the ID, we don't need an ID, so we can get rid of the ID part. One thing I'm going to do is also bind this file to a variable. But how we are going to do that, I will show you guys in the future. So when we bind into the variable, we can actually get the files and whatnot, but I'll show you guys later on. But now let's actually continue. For the input, we want to give this a class. Now these classes are very important. So we're going to give this an height of 350 pixels. Then we'll give this a width of full. Save this. Let's actually check how this looks like. So as you can see, this is the input right here. Now as this shows file, not file shows on, that is it right there. And we make this transparent. So I'll say BG transparent. Now you can see the text is still showing. I don't want that text to show. I also say text transparent. And now that text has disappeared. Nice. And for the last one, I'll say the file hidden. And this would get rid of this button from me, this choose file button. So once I save this, that choose file button should disappear. And the part of this file is going to be like the input. So we told it that the height should be 350 pixels. And now from here to here, like if I give this a border, you actually see this. You see border and border red something. As you can see, that area is acting as the input. So we can actually drag and drop things in that area and it's going to be the input. And we can actually just click here. So if you click here, as you can see, it opens the Explorer for us. So that's extremely nice. So once all of that is done, you're going to come out of the div. There's this grid div that's basically covering this first div and the input. Come out of it and make a comment here. And this comment is going to just be where we'll put the error. So if we're trying to upload a file and we have any error, this is where we render the error, but we're not going to be concerned with it for now. And we're also going to place the input right here. That's for the caption. So I will just say CNX form, and it should just render some things for us. I'm going to get rid of a bunch of them. I'll get rid of this one, the form part, and yeah, this is one I want. But you see, we have this form here that we don't actually have, and we have this one here that we don't actually have yet. So what I want you to do is this form field, comment it as well. Just place it there and comment it. So if you don't actually have the extension, you can just try this by hand. Very simple. But we're going to actually use this in the future. But for now, we just want to keep it commented. You can get rid of the description. We don't actually need a description. And yeah, the form button, we can give it a class. So we want it to look like the Instagram button. Give us a BG blue of 500. Like that. So here's the submit right here. Now that we are done with designing the modal, we can actually connect it to this create button right here. So that when we click on this, it actually opens the modal. Now I'm going to do that is very simple. We'll just go back to that svelte element that we have right here and we'll place an on click event here. And then svelte 5 is just going to be on click, simple as and short. And just have an arrow function in here. And it's going to be just checking if the text is equals to create. If it's equals to create, we are going to set open modal to true. Simple like that. And let's save this. And what we're going to do is set open modal to be false by default. So refresh the page. So as you can see, the modal doesn't open by default anymore. And when we click on create, it opens the modal up. When click outside, it closes. Click on create, it opens the modal. Very nice. One other thing actually missing is a little more menu down here. I forgot about it. There's a little menu right here that we can click and we can log out and we can also see like the theme. We can change from dark mode to light mode. And we're going to add that. So it's going to be just after this one here, but still inside the side div. So come out from the div, but still inside the side. And we'll have a drop menu component right here. And we can install the drop menu component by using chassis and svelte. Once it successfully installs, just cnx drop menu right here like this. For the trigger, we're going to have a couple of classes and it's not going to be open. But let's actually import it. Yes, those red lines will disappear. So CNI drop menu. In here we'll have more. And above that more, we're going to have the menu icon. Notice it's svelte. Give this a class. And in this class, we're going to have flex and cursor pointer because we want to have that effect. Item center. We're going to go with gap 1. Rounded. Let's go with MD. Give this a P of 3. That's all round. And text of SM. Or capitalization as well. So all the text will be capitalized. And the last class will say a BG of muted. But we only want this BG of muted to take effect when we over it. So say over. And one thing you might notice is that these classes are basically identical to the ones we have up here. That's because of we actually want it to be the same kind of look that we have. So once I save this, you should see below right here we have this more showing. But this is a smaller screen, and we still have the more text showing. I don't want the more text to show on smaller screens. So we'll put the more text in a div so we can add some classes to it. Class, say ML4 and hidden. Now it's going to become inline block when it's on the medium to larger screens. So inline block like this. Now once I save this, you see the more text should disappear. And we should only have the icon, but when we go to a larger screen, the more text will show. Now when we actually click on it, you see that the drop down item actually shows. So as you can see, I click away, it disappears. I click on it, it shows. That's because it's inside this trigger item right here. You can actually also programmatically open this, but this works for us, so we're leaving it this way. Our content is going to be different from what we have here. So let's actually change this. For the drop down menu content, we'll give this a class. And the class that we're going to go with here is, first of all, we want to define the width. The width is going to be of 300 pixels. And we'll say rounded Excel. Padding 3 and shadow. Give this a shadow of LG. I think that would be nice. Now when we open this, you should see that this looks larger and the shadow is more prominent. We don't need a label, so get rid of this drop down menu label. And we also don't need this separation for now. Get rid of this. And the first item in the drop down menu is going to be the settings. So I'll just change the text to settings. This is actually going to be a link, so we'll give this an href of slash, and just before the setting text, give this an icon, the settings icon, and it's going to be from Lucia svelte. I just love that auto import. I'm willing to wait for it. Okay, so we can actually go with this one from, so we see we have two settings right here. You can go for the one in the icons component or inside the icons folder, the one from Lucia svelte. I'll go with the one on the icons folder. like this. And we're not actually done yet. Let's get some classes to actually make it look good. So flex and go with cursor pointer, item center, a gap of 2, and padding of 3. I'll save this and I'll take a look at this. So this is what we have right here. And this is kind of what we want for the rest of the items. So I can get rid of all these other items here and just duplicate this one and change it to the needed ones. The item for this second one is going to be the activity square. So the activity square that's going to be from Lucia svelte. We'll change the name from settings to your activity. And we'll have another one. This one's going to be the saved text. So we'll get rid of this, say saved. And the icon is going to be bookmarked. And the last one here is going to be the toggle to toggle the dark mode and light mode. But before we go into that, let's actually take a look at what we have. Make sure you save the file, and you should see something like this. Very nice. Now, how are we actually going to do this light mode and dark mode stuff? We're going to be taking a look at Lucia Svelte's, or I mean Chassis Svelte's mode watcher. It was created by the same people that created Chassis and Svelte, and it enables us to add theming in different mode like dark mode and light mode very easily to our application. So I'll just go to dark mode right here and go to Svelte. As you can see, they have all the blah blah blah. You can read through it, or you can just follow. So say install mode watcher, use npm. I'll paste that in. And you can see we're going to put mode watcher in our root component, in our root layout. And we can just add the toggle very easy like that. So you can see light, dark. Works perfectly. So I'll just copy this. This should have it installed. I'll go to my root layout. Paste this in. It's actually pasting this wrong stuff. Copy this one here. Now paste it in. Yeah. Come on, boy. All right. So I'll get the components as well. I'll paste the component above. Now I want the toggle, so I'll get the toggle. And we can just copy this right here. But what we want is a little bit different than what they have here. So we'll just write ours. Go back to the sidebar. Below the saved item, create another item. This time get rid of the saved and the icon. In here, we're going to be checking for something. So we use the if block. And what we're going to be checking is we're going to be checking out for the team at this point. So we'll say if mode, and mode is going to be from mode watcher. It's going to be a store from mode watcher. So we can just import it. If the auto import doesn't want to work, we can just come above here, import mode from mode watcher. And not just mode, we're also going to get something else. We're going to get toggle mode as well. So we can just get toggle mode from here directly. And we can go below here, back to where we were. And mode is going to be a store, as I said. So in order to subscribe to this, we use the $sign in front of it. So now check if mode is equals to dark. So you should actually see autocomplete dark. If it was equals to dark, what I want to render here is the text light mode with the sun icon. So I just get the sun, and it's going to be from Lucid Svelte sun, and we'll say light mode. I would have an else right here. It's going to be else if the mode is equals to light. We're going to render the moon icon, and the text is going to be dark mode. So just wait for our auto import, and I'll write here dark mode. And let's save this and check this out on the browser. Now we have the more, click on it. You see that we have a lot of this, but we have this dark mode right here. If I click on this, you see that nothing actually happens. And the reason why nothing happens is because we have not actually hooked our toggle function to this button yet. But as you can see, it's actually being rendered. And the reason why we are seeing dark is because the mode is currently light. I can go back to my editor, and I can hook this toggle function that we are getting here, that we're importing from mode watcher to the button. And that's just the utility function that mode watcher provides for us that allows us to just easily toggle between light and dark mode. So we can easily do this by adding an on-click event right here. First of all, I'll get rid of this href. I'll put on click equals to toggle mode. As easy as that. I'll save this, and I'll take a look at this in the browser now. And we have dark mode. If I click on dark mode, it turns into dark mode, and we have light mode showing here. Click on light mode, turns into light mode, and we have dark mode. That's how easy it is to add dark mode and light mode to your application when using sveltekit and chassis and svelte. Now back to coding. Since we are done with this part, one last thing we're just going to add is the logout button. So what I can do is just copy this item, and below this one, I'll put logout here. And I'll get rid of the icon. I don't think the logout button is an icon. But you can put an icon if you want. I'll get rid of the icon. And yeah, this should look. Check up the browser more. We have all of this. Then we have this logout right here. Exactly what I want. Now at this point, I would say we have done pretty well in the sidebar, and we can actually go ahead and leave the sidebar for now and build some other parts of the application. Now the other parts that I want us to build is actually the rendering of the cards of the posts. So that's what we're going to focus on now. So go to the plus page.svelte file. That's in the app directory. Now what I'm going to do is show you guys something. So I'm just going to write this is the post page. I'll save this. And if I check my browser, you'll notice that we don't actually see that text show up. And the reason why that text is not showing up is because of this sidebar right here is actually blocking that text from showing. The text is actually being rendered. So if I go to my layout and I get rid of this sidebar, you see that text is being rendered. This is my post page. So you can see the sidebar is blocking that text from showing. So how can we fix this? Well, I'll show you how we can. What we can easily do is place this in a div. It is a class. What we want to do is just give it some margin to the left so that it gives space for the sidebar. So ML, and the margin we want it to be equivalent to the width of the sidebar, and that's going to be 73 pixels. Now it's actually 70 pixels, but I'm adding 3 pixels to give it a little bit of space, and that's nice. So say py3. You know what? Let's go with 8 so that we have ample space. So py8 and md should be ml. Now this is going to be the margin left for the larger screen, and the margin left for the larger screen is going to be 244 pixels. And if you remember, the width of the sidebar that we give it for large screens was 244 pixels. That's why I'm giving it a margin left of 244 pixels here. So I'd save this, back to my browser, and you see that we have this is the post page now being rendered and shown. The sidebar is no more blocking it. Good. Now we can actually create the post pages. So get up this text. First thing we want to do is give us a div, and in that div, we'll have two divs. So the first div we're going to work on, we'll give the first div a class. It's a flex1 and a flesh string. This is why I'm giving this a flex1 and a flesh string, is because of the parent is going to be a flex container. So say flex, and we'll give this a gap 5. Now in here, I'll have another div. Let's say class. Let me just save this so it's formatted properly. So I'll say class mx auto and a width full and a maximum width of, let's go with 630 pixels. So 630 pixels. Now save that. And in here, we're going to have two components. We're going to have this stories components. We're going to be iterating over the Twitter cards, or the tweet cards. I mean, I don't think we should call them tweet cards since it's not a Twitter clone of the postcard. Let's just go with postcard. And I'll just create a div, the container that would iterating it in. I'll give this class margin top of 5 because we want some space, and space y of 5 and px of 10 and md px 20. And then here we're going to iterate over the postcards. Oh yeah, so we are done with this div right here. If you go to your browser, you probably won't see anything because of we actually didn't render anything right here. We just laid out the structure. So the second div that we're going to have here, we're going to be holding some data. So the div of a class mx16, we say hidden on smaller screens, and we give us a width of 319, oddly specific, 319, and px of 3, text of sm, and extra large screens would have an inline of blocks. So this is when we actually want this to show on extra large screens. And in here we'll have a div. Okay, so I'm actually putting the div outside. Don't make sure you don't make that mistake. I want to be inside right here. We'll have a div. And this div will have class of flex items center and a gap of 3. And inside that div we'll have the circle user icon, and that should be imported from Lucia svelte. I'll just give this a class size of 11. After that circle user, we'll have a div, and in that div we'll have two p tags. I can use emit, say p times 2, give us the p tags. The first one is just going to render out the name, and the second one render out the username. So the first one can say Lawal Adebola, and the second one will say gmail.com. We'll give it some classes. For the one rendering out the name, let's say font medium, and for the one rendering out the email, we'll say text muted foreground. Let's save this, check our browser, and we should see this show at this side. So this middle space is going to be the place we're going to put the postcards, and here we'll render the information about the user and some suggested accounts that would statically type out. Go back to your editor, and now you can come out of this div that's covering this whole thing right here, and have another div. Here we can give this a class of margin bottom 3 and margin top 8 and flex item center justify between. Get a p tag in here, and this p tag is going to have some classes as well. So say class capitalize text muted foreground, and this p will say suggested for you, and make sure you spell suggested properly. Don't be like me. I have another div right under, and this div will just say see all. This will actually not do anything. It's just UI we are putting it. So text extra small, and the font will be medium. And if I save this, we should see this in the browser look like this. So just suggest it for you and see all. And after that, come out of this whole div again, and this time we'll have another div, but this div are going to be iterating through something, and it's going to be just popping out some dummy accounts. Come out of that div, open another div, and this div gives a class space y4, and we're going to iterate using the each block. And what we're going to be iterating over is just going to be the length of 5. So open your curly braces and say length 5. And we'll use underscore here because we don't actually have any value we want to get from this. And inside the each block, we'll have a div. And this div will have a class. First item in the class will be flex. Then items center and the gap of 3. And in that div, we'll have circle user. It's going to be an icon. And remember, we actually imported the icon already. It's a class of size 11. And here we have a div. This div will have 2 p tags. It's going to be similar to this one here, so we can just copy and paste this in here. And outside of that div, we're going to have an a tag, and this a tag is just going to act as that follow button. And give this an issue of slash because it's just for dummy accounts, and we say class will be margin left auto. Why we are doing this because we want to shift this to the very right. So if I go to the browser, you see that we have this folder here. If I get rid of that margin left auto, so that we see it at this part, but one is to be at the very right. So we say margin left auto, and it should shift. Okay, let me make sure we save that. Save, and yeah, let's keep on going on. Let's just keep on going. After adding margin left auto, we'll say a text of extra small and a text of blue 500. Save this, and yeah, nothing's actually been applied. The classes are not being applied. Let's check why. Terminal, everything is good. All right, so I think it just needs a refresh sometimes to be used like this. Aha, now it's actually showing what I wanted to show. All right. So after all of that, let's take care of two things here. The first one is going to be this stories component and this postcard component. Let's start with the stories component. So I want you to go to your components folder, and where we have the sidebar, just create a new component called postcard dot svelte, and another one should be stories dot svelte. The first one I'm going to start with is going to be the stories. So the story is going to be actually very simple. It's going to be a div, and in this div gives a class of flex wrap item center and gap of 4. And then you're going to just iterate over some dummy stories like the way I did the last time. So we'll say ish length. We would iterate it, let's say 5 times, and as underscore. Yeah, we'll have another div inside this ish block. And this div will basically just have a class of flex size 16 rounded full bg slate 400. Let's actually make this 8 times, not just 5 but 8, and go back to the browser. We won't actually see anything because we're not actually rendering this component yet. So where we have the where we have the stories commented there, just import the stories components there. Auto import, yep. And now you can get rid of the comments. And now you should see this dummy stories show. Now, nice. Now let's undo the postcard. So go to where you have the postcard component. In here, we have a div, and in this div we have an a tag in this div, and this a tag is going to be for when we click on a user's name, we see the post is made and some other information about him. So we give this a class of mb3 flex item center gap 3, and in this a tag we have the circle user icon that we are familiar with by this point, and wait for our auto import. And here we have a div, and in that div we have 2p tags, and it's going to be similar to the last ones that we did as well. So we can just paste in those. For this time, we'll have a text of SM for this one. And for this, we'll have a text of extra small. We'll save this so it's formatted properly. Nice. And after that div, we'll have another icon. That's going to be the ellipse icon. So ellipse. How do I spell it? Let's just go for the auto import. Yeah, I believe this should be ELLIPS. I think that should be it. It shouldn't be vertical or anything like that. Yeah, let's just check. IS. And actually, okay, it was actually at the top, but we didn't know that. Okay, so yeah, import that. I'll go with class ML auto Now I've explained what this ML auto does and await or fit for that ML auto to take place. Go to the browser, won't see anything because you're not rendering the component. Now go to the page file, and inside where we have the comment for the postcard, import the postcard right there. Auto import, wait all the years, then we can just go in and type it out by ourselves. Yeah, we'll get rid of the comments, save, come in here, save this as well. As you can see, we have an error here, but just put slash here, save it, check our browser for what we are seeing. We haven't seen anything yet. Let's refresh this. Aha, we should be seeing this right here. Nice. Now, after that image, after that a tag, we're going to have an image being rendered. Let's have the image tag. And for now, we won't have any source. We'll just give this a class of height 585 pixels or width of full rounded BG gray 100 and object contain. Save this, and we should have something like this. Because we didn't actually have any SL, so that's why it's having a broken image, but not to worry. After that image, we'll have a div, and this div would have a class of my2 flex item center and a gap of 5. And in here, we're just going to have a couple of icons. So the first icon we'll have is the art icon. You know what? I'm not actually going to be waiting for this to auto import just to my time. And after that, we'll have the message circle icon. And after that, we're going to have the send icon. After that, we're going to have the bookmark icon. And for the bookmark icon, I'm going to give this a class of ML auto. And because if I want to just import all of this, I'll copy and paste them inside here. Bookmark as well. Okay, save this and check the browser to see what we see. Now below here, you see all of these icons, which is the one for the log, for the comment, for the send, and for the save, which is the bookmark icon. And as you can see, the ML taking effect, it's pushing this one to the very right. So that's a very nice handy trick that you can use in your own project as well. Now, outside of that div, we'll have a p tag, and this p tag is just going to be stating the likes we have. So I'll say 100,000 likes. And then the p tag will say a class of MB2 text SM font medium, and a p tag. Here we'll have our name. So I'll say Lawal, and then I'll give this class as well. MB2 text SM font medium. And outside of that, you know what? Inside of this, not outside, I'll put a column, and here I'll put the caption. So I have a span, and in this span, I'll have the caption. So I'll just say, this is the caption. And I'll give this span a class. I would say font light. I'll save that and I'll check the browser one more time. You see, we see this right here. Very nice. Very, very nice. Outside of this p tag, we're going to have a normal button, not from chassis and svelte, just a normal button. And this button is going to say view all 24 comments or whatever number. This is just us writing whatever. And I would say class for this button would be MB2, that's margin bottom of 8 pixels. Is that 8 pixels? Yes, 8 pixels. Just want to be sure. Text SM capitalize and text muted foreground. And outside of this, would have an input, and the input is going to be for the comments. Let's say inputs. Type will be text correct, but the class will be block border none. So it has no border. We'll say BG transparent. Want it to be transparent. And outline none. Don't want any outline. And the placeholder would just have a text of SM. And as for the placeholder itself, we would say placeholder would be equals to add a comment. And I'll save this. Go to the browser. As you can see right here, we have this input. Nice. That should be all for the postcard. But we can actually add one more thing right here. What we can add is just a separator. That's just a nice UI stuff. I'm just gonna add that. So I'll come here and search for separator. I want to believe this is already installed, but I will just install it again. Give this a second, and yeah, yes, and yeah, it wasn't actually installed. So wait for that to install. And as it's installing, I can just CNX separator. And I will import it from the top as well. CNI separator. And I want to make sure that this script is for TypeScript. So I say language is equals to TX. So if you're using TypeScript, make sure you change that to language equals to TX. You see now we have this separator line. It's very faint, but it's there. That's what we wanted. Now we have done a lot in this page. Let's focus on the authentication pages. This auth right here. Saying I'll create a sveltekit file route and I'll call this login. I'll choose the plus page that's svelte and the plus page that's server.ts, which I will use later on. Now create another one, this time for you register. If you're wondering how I'm getting to do this, because I have the svelte for VS Code extension installed. So if you want to be able to do this as well, just install that extension. And now click on both of these. Yeah. And inside this auth, I will have a layout file as well. So level plus layout dot svelte. And I'll just take the then to be similar to the layout here. So I'll copy this. I'll paste it here. Get rid of all the things I don't need. I clearly don't need the sidebar. And these classes are going to be different. So in our case, for the auth layout, we're going to say grid and an height of screen and then a width of screen as well. So I want to take the whole damn screen and want it to be in the middle. So we'll say place item center. Now we'll start with the login page. Get rid of all of this. And since we're going to be using sveltekit super forms and form snap, but we don't already have their schemas and other things in place, I'm just going to use the normal input for now, and we'll come back later and we'll change it. But first of all, I want to install the card components. Okay, so add new components. I'll go with card. And one thing I'm going to do is go to chassis and svelte here, and I'll go to blocks. So on the blocks, they have a very nice snippets that we can copy for authentication. So I'll just scroll down. Wait for all this to load. So you see this one, just look for authentication 01 and copy the code. Make sure that you install the card components and paste the code right in here. So it's using the input, using the label, using the card, and using the button. And we should have all of this actually installed. This shouldn't throw an error at all. So when I save this, okay, so the input isn't actually installed. So let's install the input. Yes, watch that install. And that red line should disappear in a minute. All right, so check this in the browser. Go to slash login, and we can see this right here. Nice. But we don't actually want to see this. We want to see the Instagram logo. Yeah. I'll go back to the card head right here, and the title and the description. I'll get rid of both of them. And in here, I'll just have a div, and in this div, I'll have the logo component imported in here. Just wait for my auto import. I waste a lot of time just waiting for that auto import. I don't know why. And then a div gives a class of mx auto and width fit. So it goes to the middle. And if I check that out, you have this Instagram logo right here in the middle. Nice, nice, nice. Yeah. Now let's do the same thing for the register. So go back to the blocks in chassis and svelte and look for authentication 03. This is the one I'm going to be using. Copy the code. Go to the register page. Get rid of everything in here and paste the code in there. And just like we did for the card head, so I'll just copy the one we had here and the card head, and I'll replace it with this one here. And you just want to import this, the logo. Make sure you import the logo, don't forget about it. Save this. And if I go back to my browser and I go to register, you should see the registration page show up. Yeah. And in here we see create an account. We also say sign up with GitHub. We don't want this sign up with GitHub stuff. So we'll get rid of that one. And it shows already have an account, sign in. We will say login. And we'll ratio is going to be to the login page. And we'll just copy this and paste it for the login as well. So let's just see where they place it. Okay, card content. And then the login, the card content. Paste this in here. I'll just say, don't have an account, register. Don't. And yeah, so register. And the URL will also go to the registration page. And I'll check on my browser to see. Okay, the effect haven't taken place. So let's save all the files and check one more time. Now we have this. Click on login, it takes the login page and it says don't have an account to register right here. Nice. So now that we've built out most of the UI, let's actually start looking at the backend things that we're going to be doing. So Remember, for our database, we're using a Postgres database, and it's going to be provided to us by Neon. So what I want you to do is to sign up for an account on Neon, and I'll show you how to create a database on Neon. It's very, very simple, very easy. I already have a account, so I'm just going to log in. I'm logged in already, and with Neon we have one free database, so you don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to give them your card information at all. So you can just create a project. Project name would be, let's say, Instagram clone, and the database name would be Instagram DB. And the region, you can just go with any region. I'll just go with the default one here, and I'll click on create project. And now we have that database created just like that. And one nice thing we can do with Neon is create branches, but we won't be going into that today, but it's just extremely nice. And what I want you guys to do is to come to your dashboard. So click on the sidebar, click on the dashboard button here, and you'll see your connection string. So you can just copy it, or you can just avoid it now. But what I want us to do is to keep this in our env file. So we're not actually going to be using it. So if you want to just avoid this for now and come back later on to do this step, you can. But I'm going to copy mine. So you can click on this. So I don't want to show my password, but you can click on this copy snippet and then follow on to the next step. Now in your app, you just want to go to the very root and create a file called .env. And in this file, I'll create of env variable called, now in uppercase, database underscore u sorry url, and equals, and here I'll place in what I just copied now, so I don't want you guys to see mine. I'll paste mine and then we'll continue. So I already have mine pasted in my env file, and that's the string that we're going to use to connect to the database. But for what we're going to use to interface with the database, we're going to be using the Drizzel ORM. So we can just go back to our browser, go back to the Drizzel documentation, and yeah, as you can see, so go to the documentation right here, and you'll see the overview, but we are not bothered with the overview. What we are bothered with is connecting this to our Postgres database. And as you can see, they have separated it for the three main relational databases. We have Postgres, MySQL, and SQLite. So go to Postgres, and they're even gonna have to separate it for the different types of database, Postgres database that you might be using to make it easier for you to connect with them, which is extremely nice of them. So we'll go with Neon because of we're using Neon, and it's actually the first one, so it doesn't actually do anything. But we have the steps right here. I'm using PNPM, so I've clicked on PNPM already, and I can just install both of these. So first of all, I'm going to want to install Drizzle ORM and the Neon Database serverless driver, and then I want to install Drizzle Kit as a dev dependency. So I'll copy this one first, paste this in here, and I'll copy this one as well. And the second this installs, I'll paste that one in. That's done. So paste in the second one and we'll install the Drizzle kit. And yeah, what we're going to do is after installing it, we're going to connect to Neon in this manner. So what you can do is just copy this. Don't copy the result part, it's just copy from here. Good. And go back to your application. Now, what we just copied is a way for us to connect to our database, and we want to do that securely and on the server only. We don't want that to mistakenly leak to the client. So, how we can make sure that it does not mistakenly leak to the client is by going to this leaves folder and creating a server folder here. Now, anything, this I have my cap locked and done. Now, anything placed in the server folder will only run on the server if by any chance you import something from the server folder to the client or the browser, it will throw an error for you. So sveltekit tries to keep us safe. So in this server, would have a file called db.ts, and in here I'll just paste that code that we copied right here. So what it's doing is basically importing Neon from the Neon surveillance based driver and Drizzel from Drizzel ORM Neon HTTP, and we are connecting to Neon with Drizzel. What I'm going to do is export this out so that we can actually use this outside of this file. Now that we've connected to our Drizzel um, database by just copying the instruction, what we want to do is to make this specific to sveltekit. So in sveltekit, this is not actually how we use an env variable. We'll get rid of that, and remember our env variable name was database URL. So I can just say database underscore URL, and this should auto import for me if I'm not wrong. So as you can see, if we click this or clicked on enter, it would import this from env static private, meaning this can only be imported in the server or on the server. If this is imported in the client, it's going to throw an error. And this is how we use env or environment variables in sveltekit. Now, after successfully connecting to our database using Drizzel, next thing we're going to do is create a schema file. Now, still inside this libs folder, but outside the server folder, create a new folder. Needs to be inside the lib. Create a new folder called schema, and in this schema, create a file inside called index.txt. Now, left to me, I like to create a new file for each table that we are creating, but because this is a quick tutorial, we're going to be putting all of our schemas inside this, or all of our tables inside this index.txt. And in order to do relational queries in Drizzel to give you that experience like you get with Prisma and some other ORMs when querying data, we can just go back to our DB file, and in here we can import the schema and place it inside here. So in this import here, I'll say import asterisk as schema from the $sign lib slash schema, and in here I'll just put schema like this because it's the same name. So schema. If you don't understand what's going on, don't really worry about it. Just know that now we'll be able to query data more efficiently, and joins and all that stuff will be done for us automatically. Now we're having an error that schema is not a module, and the reason for that is because we don't actually have anything being exported out of this file yet. But before we actually start writing down our schemas, let's set up our auth. So set up the database already, which was necessary for our auth. Now that the database is set up, let's set up the auth. And as I said, the authentication library we use in this perfect abstraction stack currently is Lucia Auth. So just go to the luciaauth.com website and go to get started. And as you can see, we have framework specific guides. We are using sveltekit, so click on sveltekit and it tells us to install Lucia Auth as a dev dependency. So I can just copy this. We have a bunch of terminals open, so just paste this usb npm install, and it shows us how to initialize it inside the auth.ts file inside the server folder, and it also shows us how to set up hooks as well. But the one thing you would notice here is that in this example, they are using SQLite, so they're using the better SQLite 3 adapter. And for our own application, we are using a Postgres database, we're using Neon, and we're using Drizzel as well. So I'm going to go to the database guide, click on the database link here. And here you can see a bunch of databases, but you will also see ORMs. So instead of going for Postgres SQL, go for Drizzel ORM. And as you can see, we're going to first of all have to install this, the adapter for Drizzel, and it supports MySQL, Postgres, and SQLite. Copy this, paste this in here, and I'll change this to PNPM. That's for MySQL. This is for Postgres. As you can see, it's showing us how to set up the user table and the session table as well because of we are going to be using session cookies. And that's what Lucia Auth uses by default. And it shows you you're going to have to use the Drizzel Postgres SQL adapter. So I'll basically copy both of these like this, and I'll place this inside our schema. Now schema file, this one here. And make sure to export. So every table you create in this schema file, make sure you export it out. But we still have a bunch of errors, so all these are not yet being imported. But no worries, we would import them here. Now after doing this, you can save this file, and in the server folder, put a new file called auth.ts. This is where we would initialize Lucia auth. Now go back to the getting started for sveltekit. Remember we had this. So copy this. We're going to change some parts of this like the beta SQLite adapter and so on, but copy that and paste that in right there. First of all, we're not going to be using this beta SQLite. We're going to be using the Drizzel Postgres SQL adapter. And if you remember, I don't think I need to be going back every single time, but if you remember right here, when we choose Drizzel ORM, we had for Postgres this adapter right here. So I can basically just copy the import, paste it in there, and go back to the browser, just the way they initialize it here. Copy, and I'll replace this adapter right here with that. First of all, they're asking us to add the DB as the first argument. And remember, we're actually exporting the DB from our DB file. So we can just paste that there. And the session table, we're going to get it from the schema. Paste that and the user table as well. Once you've done that, we're going to customize this to actually fit our own needs. But for now, we can leave this as it is. And you see right here, we have guides, right? We have this email and password. And this is the one that we're actually building. So we can click on that. And we'll click on password basic. So as you can see, for the email and password authentication, we need two fields. We need the email and need the password hash. And this has to be on the users table. And currently on our users table, if I check the schema, we don't have any of that. We only have the ID. So let's add both of those. Email. And if you don't know Drizzel, just write this as this. What we are saying is this is going to be the name we'll be able to interface it with, but this is the name. It's going to be written in the database. So you might be thinking, why are we writing it twice? Well, this is what it will look like in a database, but this is what we'll be able to use to work with it since we are working in a TypeScript environment or JavaScript environment. So we have email, we are saying not null. So this is the constraint thing that we can pass a value to this, and we want this to be a unique column on this table as well. And we'll do pass word hash. Remember that was the next one. And it's going to be text. And here we say password underscore hash, and that's because of in SQL the convention is to use underscore, but in and that's a snake case. But in JavaScript, the convention is to use camel case. That's how we can do this. And while we are at it, we can actually add some more. So in our case, we also need the first name. Are you kidding me? I have so many mistakes at the same time. The first name, and we need the last name as well. And for the first name, we're going to just add a constraint. So say we want the length to be maximum of 50, and we'll do the same for the um last name as well. So you see that this is giving us an error, and that's because we're using text here. In order to be able to do things like this on strings, we need to be using the varchar. So varchar, and we import that from PG core. Get rid of this icon. I don't know what this icon is doing here. And I'll copy this as well for the last name. Basically the same thing. So once we've added that, as you can see now, we can declare the types in our database users attribute and add the attributes to the users object using the get users attribute configuration, like the way they did right here. So first of all, you notice that in this their interface, they have these database attributes, and they're putting the email right here. And in this get users attributes, they are returning the attributes that they want to expose. So we don't need to expose the password hash. That's why they're exposing only the email. Or in our case, we'll expose the email, first name, and the last name. So we'll go back to our code. We'll go back to our auth.ts file. And after we have session cookies here, we'll write get user attributes. In here, we can just get attributes and return. Now we can return the fields we want to return. So email, and email is going to become attribute.email, then the first name and the last name. And this is going to become attribute.first name, and this would be attribute.last name. And we have all these red lines popping up because of we don't actually have these types declared, so we declare them below in this register. So after Lucia, we'll say data is user attributes, and here I want to put a type for these users. And one way we can do that in Drizzel is to just infer the type from this users table. So I'll show you guys how to do that now. What I want you guys to do is on the same level of this schema, create a new folder, not inside the schemas folder, on the same level. That is in the libs folder. Create a new folder called types. And inside types, we just have a file called index.txt. Now to get the user type based solely on the schema table, to the fact that it will even change when we change or remove anything here. If we add anything here, it will be inferred. If we remove anything here, it will be inferred. And we can just do that so it's as dynamic as possible. It should say export. I'm having problems spelling export again. Export type will be equals to, all right, type user, we actually need to write equals to user, and user with a capital letter U because this is a type, equals to type of the user table. Make sure that we import this, and then we say dot $sign infer select. Now, one way we could have done this is add coded this type, right? So this is dynamically getting or inferring the type from the table. So anytime we change anything here, it automatically knows and it's inferred. So we don't have to be updating it manually. Now we have the user's type here. So if I overwrite, you see that that's string for the ID. Email is string, the password actually is a string, first name is a string, and the last name is a string as well. And if I go back to my auth right here, I can just import that user type, say user, like such. And I don't think I've actually saved that file, but yeah, I can import it from the libs slash types. And now we should actually be able to see the auto import work here. So all the red lines should disappear. Moving on, we need to be a way to see what's going on in our database. One easy way of doing that is by using Drizzel Kit Studio. So I'm just going to create a script for that so we don't have to be writing that long as command. I'll go with package, and in here, right here in this script part, comma, then call this studio. And the script is going to be Drizzle Kit space studio. Now when I run pnpm studio, it should give us a minimal database. Um, okay, so it says studio is not. The reason for that is I didn't save the package as JSON file, so I saved it. Let's run it one more time, and it's throwing another error, and this time it's telling us that we have not configured path for our database and for Drizzle overall, and that is a step that I actually forgot. So pardon me. So when using Drizzle, one very important part for us to do is to configure our drizzle.config file. And this is mainly for Drizzle kits, which allows us to do things like migrations and run the studio. So what I can do is basically just copy this and go to the very root of our project and create a file called drizzle.config.ts since I'm using TypeScript. And I'll paste that in. And as you can see, first of all, we need to put in the part of the schema. And this is not our part, so our part is that since we are at the very root, we first have to go into src slash src, then slash lib slash schema slash index.tx, like that. And then we would begin to have the dialect. The dialect is Postgres, which is correct. And we have the DB's credentials. This is where we're putting our database URL. And since we are no more inside our file, we're no more inside this SRC, we're no more inside the application, we can't really use that sveltekit manner of getting the environment variable. But we could actually work, funny enough, but it's going to be throwing an error. You'll see this red line showing. So one way of doing it is just install .env. So that will save us all those issues. So do npm add dot .env, and once that installs, we can just import .env slash config, and we can now import config, double curly braces, config from .env. After that, we can say config curly braces, and the path will just be .env, like that. Now we can easily use process.env database URL underscore URL. So we don't actually have need for these variables and this strict. Get rid of it. And one last and important thing that we need to set up here is where we want the migrations to be. So I'll say out, and How to say dot slash migrations. And if you notice that you are seeing all those red lines, and the reason for that is because of it says that type URL is either string or undefined, and undefined is not accepted. So we'll just put our exclamation mark on the back of this, and that red line should go away. Now when we save this, everything should work properly. Now let's try and run the studio again. So this time we'll run pnpm studio, and just hopefully, let's see. It should spit out a URL that we can use. And yes, so this one right here. I'll control click on this and I'll open. And you should see Drizzel Studio opened up for us with 0 tables in the database. Okay, that's nice. Then close both of this. The next thing we want to do now is to convert these schemas into SQL. So we can do that using DrizzleKit generate and then migrate that SQL file to the database using DrizzleKit migrate. But since we are using a database like Neon, which can undo migrations for us. So it will generate all that stuff and do the migrations for us. One thing we can just do is do DrizzleKit push. That's that one command and everything is good. And that one is favorable for when you're doing development and you're just prototyping very fast. So that's what we're going to be using. So again, I'm going to create a script for that. So it's easier for us to just type in. So right here, I would say call this push. Script is going to be DrizzleKit push. Now, if I run that, run npm push, give that a second. As you can see, links come from database and changes have been applied. If I go to my database and I refresh this here, hopefully we should see those 2 tables now listed here. You see the users table and we see the sessions table, but they are both empty. But now we've migrated them to the database. That's nice. Now let's go back to Auth. We actually left Auth for a minute there, but we've not actually completed it. As you can see, we need to do some couple of things. Now we can actually register user, and this is the code to register a user. Since we've done this already, we can go ahead and we can register a user. As you can see from the example, they are just making sure that the email and the password are correct, and then they hash the password, and then they generate a user's ID using generate user ID from entropy size, which is a utility that Lucia Auth provides for us. And then they simply just create a session. Once they've added that user to the user's database, they create a session and they create a session cookie from that and they store it in the cookies in the browser. So that's what we're going to do. Simple as that. And let's focus on this hashing password part a little bit. So as you can see, they're telling you what is recommended to use for hashing the password. For Node.js environments, use the Argon 2, and for Bond, we recommend using Bond.password. For Dino use the Dino specific packager for Dino. And then for other runtimes like Cloudflare Workers, which is very important because of most of my applications that I deploy on Cloudflare Workers. It tells you that shares are very limited in Noble Hash and blah blah blah. But what you can use is if you are using an edge runtime like Cloudflare Workers or Vercel Edge, is to use the Web Crypto API. That one works flawlessly. It's simple to just hash a password and go on. And it's not like a hashing algorithm like Argon 2, but it works fine. But you can also use this legacy script from Lucia. This one also works well as well. I don't think you will actually go for legacy script. You just go for scripts. So this one is if you are migrating from version 2. So just use scripts and it should work on environments like Cloudflare Workers. But in our case, we're going to be using the Argon 2 hashing algorithm. But before we can actually register a user, we need to set up our form correctly. And right now, we just have go to the register page. We just have this very simple form here. And what we want is a form, a complete form that takes care of validation, takes care of error handling, and all that stuff. So remember, I said we're using super forms, and with super forms, we're going to be using sort for validation. So for your in your libs folder, create a new folder called validation. And then you create an index.txt file. And here we're going to be defining schemas, but not schemas for our database, schemas for our form. Export const register schema would be equals to, and now we can use Zod, so I can say z dot object. I can basically just create a Zod object here that I would validate from. As you can see, very easy like this. Make sure that we import Zod, and we can easily just create a schema, a Zod schema like this. But this is not the method I'm going to be going with for the register schema at least. What I'm going to be doing is using something that um, Drizzel provides for us called Zod Drizzel or Drizzel Zod. Let me check this. And this is one of the best things personally when it comes to using Drizzel in my opinion, because it allows you to take your Drizzel schema and all the constraints and all that and convert it into Zod schema. So it works nicely with this stack. So in this stack, we use Zod for validation and we use it to validate our form. So if the form maps one to one to what the database is expecting, you can just use this and it validates it properly. You don't have to write any extra code. So as you can see, all you have to do is install the dependency, pm add drizzle zod. We'll install that. Once that's installed, we can basically use the create select schema and create insert schema. The one that we'll probably be using the most of the time is create insert schema, because that is for when we are about to insert data into the database, we want to validate from it from there. And we can also do a lot of things like we can refine the fields and we can customize it, we can add things to it, we can remove things from it. Since it's just plain Zod, we can omit and do some cool stuff. So I'll show you guys all of it, don't worry. Once the package is installed, just get rid of this Z object right here. We'll use create insert schema. And this is going to be from Drizzel Zod. Yeah. And then yeah, we'll have to pass in a table that I want to create from. And it's going to be the user table. Now this is going to create the Zod schema. So as you can see, ID, email, password hash, first name, and last name. Now if you realize the only things that we want to validate from is the email, first name, and last name, and a password field, not the password hash field or password field. Now we can actually customize this is to have an option right here of curly braces, and in here we can change a lot of things. So one thing we want to change first of all is the email. So with Zod we can actually use the dot email utility or constraint to validate emails. But right here, this is just saying that email should be a string, but in our case, we want email to be an email, not just a string. So we can say email would be here we can get the schema. So we say S for schema and be S dot email dot email, the usual email we get from Zod. That works. And things like, let's say the first name now, we want to give it a minimum of one. So by default, this is going to allow an empty string. As far as the string is going to allow it, and we don't want that. So I'll say first name. I'll say we want to make this a minimum of one. So I want to add minimum, right? Yes, I'll just get rid of the string first of all. So since it's already a string, you know it's already a string. So what we can do is add minimum. I will say one. And we can add messages here as well. So as a message, and first name must be at least blah blah blah. And we can do the same for like last name as well. So as you can see, we can do the same for last name. And yeah, I know some of you might be thinking that isn't this a bit too much? Like the way we did it in the past, we just use like a Z object and it works properly. But I tell you guys, this format is useful, not in every places because of it might not be going through this stress every single time. But in a lot of places and a lot of cases, it's actually very useful because of when you change your schema, yeah, you don't have to go back here and change this as well. So this would automatically get it to be inferred directly to the stored schema. And you can actually just extend this if it doesn't fit exactly what you need. And you can actually have just completely ignore some of the fields that you don't need. Like for example, the ID and the password hash, right? In our case, we don't need it for our own form because we're not imputing the ID, we're not imputing the password hash. All of that's going to be automatically inserted. But since they are not required, we can just ignore it. Now that's a little bit of unnecessary code that would have access to, but we can just ignore it and pretend like it's not there. But personally, I don't like having code that is not supposed to be there to be there. So what you can do is omit it if you don't want to have it there. And this doesn't really make sense for like very small schemas like the user schema. You actually see the benefit of this if you have a really large schema, like let's say a property listing table. You have a bunch of users and you don't want to write the schema and then come and write the Zod objects again. You might want to use something like this because it just helps you out. So once now I want to do here is actually add the password field because right now we have password hash, which is not the password field. So I'll extend. So with Zod we can extend, and in here I'll just add password z dot string. I'll give this some minimum of 8 characters. And one other thing we can do is omit. So as I said, if you don't want those fields to be there, like user ID, I mean like the ID and password hash, we can omit them. So when we put omit, you can see we have ID. So I can say ID to be true and the password hash as well to be true. Now, if I over this register schema, you'll see that we have the ID and the password omitted. And it's basically just going to be the first name, the last name, and the email that we'll be able to use here. And I know those of you still thinking that, man, this is a long code, but this was just to show you how to use it basically. It doesn't really make sense. For this use case, you'd see the benefits when you have a very large schema. But for this use case, it really doesn't. We could have really just coded this and be out of this file a long time ago. But yeah, this works well. So for um the login schema as well. So we can just have that here now. And I'm not going to be going through the craziness of using this create inside schema because it doesn't make sense for this use case. So just use the Zod, a normal Zod schema, and we'll have the email and the password. Simple and short. Now that we've actually created both schemas, we can convert the forms and the pages. So first of all, we're going to take care of the register page. So we're using super forms, sveltekit super forms. And one thing in sveltekit super forms is to get the schema from the server first of all. So I'll get rid of this part. And in my server load function, I say const form is equals to await super validate import super validate from sveltekit superforms, and in here we'll state that we want to use the Zod validation library. So we'll say Zod and we'll import Zod from sveltekit superforms as well. ZOD. Well, the autocomplete isn't working. So and inside the Zod parameter, we'll put in the schema. It's going to be the register schema that we are exporting out of the validation file or validation folder. Just make sure you import dot from sveltekit super forms slash adapters, and here we'll say zod. Get rid of this import, we don't need it here. And I'll return um form. Save this. Go back to my plus page plus felt file. Now I can get that form through let curly braces open and close data from, why do I always make mistake now, from equals to dollar sign props runs. Now we have the data here. Now I can initialize super forms by typing const form is equals to super forms. Make sure we import super forms without an S. Sorry, there's no S in super form. Import it from sveltekit super forms here. And the first argument is going to be the form that we're getting from the server. So it's going to be data dot form, because that's what we are returning it as. And we have some options here. The option we're going to add is the validator. And this is for client side validation. Just add minimal Zod clients. So since we're already using this Zod adapter here, we'll use the Zod clients to add the schema, the Zod schema to the clients. This is going to be register schema. Just wait for that to import. Okay, so the auto import, it doesn't want to work. Ah, he actually showed there for like a second. Well, we'll just paste this here. You don't have to wait for it to show. And now from form, we can destructure a couple of things from form. So I'll say const open and close curly braces is equals to form. Now add an S to validators. That's why it's actually having a red line. Add an S to it. The red line disappears. And we can destructure a couple of things from form. First of all, we can get the enhance, which is to enhance the form. You can get the lead. You can get error with an S. You can get the form as well. Now, the name form and this name form is going to cause conflict, so we can just rename this. Rename that to form data. Now, in here, instead of having a label and an input, what would have would be from form snap, and it's going to be the styled one that SvelteKit or that Chatien Svelte provides for us. So, because I don't want to type by hand, I'm going to do the CNX form, so it pops snippets for us and upgrade of what I don't need. So, don't need the form covering just this part. I don't need the button, but what I need is everything inside this form field, except some few things like description. I don't need description. And this input, I'll make it the one from chassis and svelte. And the bind value is going to be binding to the form data, and form data, which is this, is going to be a store. So you need to auto subscribe to it with dollar sign, not there, right here. When you are binding the value to that data, to that input, and in here you're going to put the field you want in the name. So you're going to have auto completion actually, and you have to pick which one from the register schema. And right now it's not actually working because of we're not importing form. So CNI form to get it imported, and yeah, in name you should be able to get individual fields. So as you can see, the only fields we have access to is email, first name, last name, and password. That was how we define it in our register schema. So the first one here is going to be the first name, and this form data is going to be form data dot first name, and this label. Let's get rid of the label. I don't think we need the label. So we'll get rid of the label as well. And one very important thing that we need to do is cover this whole thing in a form. So right now we have this div being what covers the whole thing. So we turn this div into a form, and this div will give it a method of post, and we'll say use enhance. Now this enhance is an action that is provided to us by sveltekit superforms. Now sveltekit itself also has an enhance action that it provides, but we won't be using that one. We'll be using the one from sveltekit superforms. And we can just omit the action. If we omit the action attribute, it's going to use the default um action on this page. That's going to be the one we will set on the server file. So now we can do something very similar as we've done for this field right here for the other fields. So in this field now we'll see that it's going to be completely validated, won't be able to pass on the wrong type of information inside to the database. If I go to my application, if I go to the register page, I'm actually getting an error. If I check my server to see where the error is coming from. Alright, so what you want to do is just cut this and start it over again. So that should probably fix it. Sometimes when you install these dependencies, you might need to just restart your dev server. So I'll refresh this and I'll see the way this goes. Now it works, and you see that our register form is probably not looking the best. And that's because of we've not actually taken care of all these remaining fields. So let's do that for the remaining fields. Before I leave this field, I just want to add a placeholder to actually know what you're supposed to actually add here. Since we're removing the label, it's good for us to add a placeholder. I'll just say here first name. And I'll copy this field and I'll just paste it in for the remaining parts. So for the last name, paste it there, and I'll change every instance of first name to last name. I'll change in a place without the first to last. So you can just do this as well. So for the email, do the same thing. And for the password as well. Now for the password field, you're going to have a type of password on the input. The type is equals to, so it actually doesn't show the input as we type it. So in the place where I'll just say password. Now I'll save this and I'll check my browser. Make sure this is saved properly. Now as you can see, all of those labels and all that rubbish have gone away. And we have first name, last name, email, and password. This way we like it. And if I try to create an account, you see that it tells us that we have not inputted anything in the first name and the last name, the email, and the password as well. And you can actually customize all of these um error messages. I'm not going to be bothering with them, but I believe I showed you how to. So if you go back to our validations, you can see, and the message here, we can customize this. Customize it for the email as well and for the password. So what I want to do now is to actually go and create the action. So we've added the validation to the form. Let's create the action that will actually register a user. I can type export const action equals to curly braces, and because we're going to be using a default action, so say default in sync, and right here I'm going to the structure of the request. This should actually be auto now because I said action and not actions. So it should be actions. I can get the request, as you can see, auto complete, and I can get the cookies as well. Next thing, const form would be equals to await. Very similar to the one we have on the load function, just that this time we're going to be adding the request to it. So say super validate. First argument is going to be the request. The second one is going to be the schema inside the adapter that we're using. Since we're using the Zod adapter, we say Zod, and inside the Zod adapter is going to be the register schema. Now we need to check if this form is actually valid because we're actually checking if the form is valid and doing the validation on the client, but we also want to do validation on the server as well. So we'll type if form dot valid is false. That's basically what we're checking for there. Would return fill, and fill is going to be from sveltekit. So fill from sveltekit, and the status code is going to be 400, and we'll just return the form. Yeah. But if the form was actually valid, we can just get all of the fields from it. So we structure all of the fields from form.data. So as you can see, we have all of them fully typed. We have the email, we have the first name, last name, and we have the password. And what we want to do now is actually hash this password. So I'm going to go back to the browser and check out it did it. Yeah. If I go back to the password here, see how they hash it using um, Argon 2, which means that we're going to have to install something else. But Lucia has script installed for us. So instead of using Argon 2, I remember I said we're going to use Argon 2, but you can use Argon 2 if you want to. But I just don't think there's any need for us to install another package and all that. We can just use a script that's provided to us by Lucia Auth. So I'll say const script is equals to new script. We'll go with this. This is okay for our needs. And this script is going to be from Lucia. It's going to be imported here. And in here, what we're going to do is after initializing script, you can say const password hash. It's going to be await script dot hash, and then we'll place the password in there. So now we should have the password for hashed. Now we can get a user ID using the get ID from entropy size. I'll say is equals to generate ID from entropy size, and we'll give it the value of 10. Now, since we have the password hash and user ID, I can simply add this user to the database. I'll say const user is equals to await db. Make sure that we import db properly. db dot. Now, the way Drizzel works is very similar to usual SQL. So we'll say dot select and in select, just say email user table, and user table needs to import user table. Now I only want the email. That's why I'm saying select. And what I'm actually doing here is trying to check if this email exists on our database already. That's the first step I'm doing it right here. So I'll say database.select and I'm selecting just the email. So I'll say user table dot email dot from now from where from the user table dot where now this is where it comes where e now we just want to check where the email is equals to the email basically. So we can do that with the EQ function. So EQ and we need to import this. Now in here we're going to put in the two values we want to compare. Now case is going to be the user table's email each column on the user table. We're going to compare the email with the email that we have getting from the form right here. So it's basically going to be users table.email with this email. Yeah. I have a little bit of issue here. This which is wrapping in. Yeah, I don't know why. I'll get rid of that. I'll also get rid of this. I don't know what this is supposed to be. But yeah. And now I just want to limit this up to one. So this should actually only give me one result since the email is always unique. So I'll limit this to one. And now this will return to me an array of emails, right? But since it's just going to be one email that we know is just going to be one that's going to be returned, what we can do is check if this email length is greater than 0. So if the user's length is greater than 0, then we know that we saw one email that is identical to the email that the user wants to register with. So we'll stop the user from registering and we'll let him know that this email is taken. You guys should make sure you actually write this correctly because of mine has been showing a couple of errors. So I don't know if you might be having issues. Just make sure that because you can see that the parentheses are a lot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this so that you can actually see this. Okay, it's not wrapping. I'll wrap this manually just for your case so that you can see it properly. All right, like this. And now I can say if user dot length is greater than 0, that means there was one identical email. I can just return. Now this is one nice number performs. Now I'm just going to return set errors, and it's going to first argument is going to be the form. The second one is going to be the field email. The third one is going to be the message. I'll say this email is taken. And now what this will do is actually go to that direct input that the error occurred and set this error to that direct input. That's just wonderful. So I will actually demonstrate the way this works. But let's continue. So if this actually didn't run, make sure you actually import set error first of all. Now if this actually didn't run, we'll just continue to the next line. And it's going to be a try and catch block that we'll have right here. So say try, then try without await db dot this time insert. Where do you want to insert? To insert in the user table, and the values we want to insert are basically all of those values that we got. But first of all, the ID. Want to make sure that the ID is the user's ID. This one that we're generating from entropy size. So as you can see, it's even giving us errors on the values here, telling us that the required fields are not actually added. That's nice. So we can add the email, we can add the password hash, you can add the first name, and you can add the last name. Good. Now after doing this, we want to create a session. Click session would be equals to await Lucia dot create. Now I want to import Lucia first of all. So it's going to be the Lucia that we are exporting out from Auth.js. Make sure you don't make any mistake. So Lucia dot. You want to go with create session. So create session, and in there you're going to place the user's ID. So that's going to be the first argument, user ID, and then we'll just have empty curly braces for the options. Now after creating a session, we're going to create a session cookie from the session. So session cookie is going to be equals to Lucia dot create session cookie, and we just pass in the session dot ID. And now we can use the cookies API from sveltekit to set the cookies there. So I'll say cookies dot set, and I'll name instead of giving this a name by myself, I'll leave this name into Lucia Auth. So I'll say session cookie dot name, and it's going to be session cookie dot value. And in these options, we'll get all of this rubbish that Copilot dropped for us, and we're going to just the only thing we're going to set here is going to be the path. The rest, CL is going to take care of it for us. So I'll say paths is just dot, and I will spread session cookie dot attributes like this. Now that's all. Right after the try block, you want to have a cache block where we just log out that there was an error. So I'll just say CLG and have a console log. Yeah, an error code. And outside of the try and the cache block, I'll just redirect. So you put a return after the console log on the cache block. Okay. And after the try and cache block, I have a redirect, and redirect is going to be from sveltekit. And the status code is going to be 302 since we're dealing with a form, and the path is going to be slash. Now this redirect will only run if try was successful. If catch run, this redirect won't run. If we place this redirect inside this try, like after this, it's going to trigger this catch because of this actually true. So on the behind, it's actually throwing this redirect. And if you throw something inside the catch, inside the try, it's going to get caught by the catch block. So do it after the try and catch like this. Save that, and this should actually work. This should actually register a new user, add him to the database, add a new session, and so on and so forth. So, should we check it out now, or should we move on and do some more? I say we should check it out right now and see the way it actually works. So if there's any issues, we can catch it up now. Okay, all right. Just fill in these forms, and I'll put in password. Now click on create an account. Now we clicked on the creating account and we don't actually see like a state of maybe it's loading and all that nice stuff that you probably want to see. So we can actually fix that by going here and just create an account here. Just cut that out and we'll have an if block here. We're gonna be looking at the delayed store. So if on dollar sign delayed, I'll just render this loader icon from Lucid Svelte, and we'll use the animate spin from Tailwind to make it spin. That was a mistake. It's supposed to be self-closing. Here we'll get this a class. We'll say size of 4 and animate spin. and we'll have an else. Then we'll paste that create an account that we cut. Now once we save this, that should format properly. And if I check in the browser, now remember we actually created our accounts that time. So let's actually check it when we worked out on the browser. So I'll refresh this. Now we should have one user and one session. And yes, if you can see, we have this one user here. We have the ID, we have the email, we have the password hash, we have the first name, which is Adibola, the last name, which is Bawa, and the session, which is related to this session. That's right. So what happens if we try to create an account with that same email? Well, you'll see that it just doesn't just throw an error. It throws an error as that specific field, which is a very great user experience, if you ask me to. And I'm using the same email I just registered with. Now click on create an account. As you can see, it tells us that this email is taken. Very nice. So if I change this email to something like this, I want this to not just register us, but redirect us to the home page as well. That was something that I didn't notice happen the last time. Let's see if it actually works. So it works perfectly fine. That's what we want. So let's actually take care of login since we've already handled register. Login should be easy. So we'll go to the login page. And first of all, we need to take care of all of these fields. So we can copy the fields the way we did them for the register. I'm just going to copy this whole thing. Yeah. Create on the login page. And this register schema, we change it to um, login schema. Now, don't mind me when I'm doing this, I'm just copying all of this. So you can do the same. So we don't actually waste time. So I'm just copying this and I'm changing it when I need to change it. Get rid of this part. It shouldn't be register schema, it should be login schema. And we'll get rid of this type as well. We don't need this type. Import login schema like that. Now, import page. We need to import super forms and we need to import some popular things. So import super forms, import Zod client as well. And yeah, go back to the post page. And the form you can copy and paste the form. Yeah. Use it to cover the whole thing, including the button. So put the form actually outside this class content so that there's no error and get rid of the class. Save this. Yeah, the error should go away. Now for the fields themselves, I just copy this field and I'm replacing them with this. So this is going to be email. Yeah, say place so that should be email. And this is going to be passwords. And the placeholder should be password. And we also want to give this a type of password as well. And just like that, we should have gotten. Oh, I remember that's not. Oh, we need to import the form as well. So CNI form. Yeah, save that. And what's left is actually do the action, but now we should actually have validation and all that and set up on the login page. So let's go to the login page slash login. So I actually forgot to actually import all of this on the server file of of the login page. I mean, so make sure you import the Zod adapter and the super validate function from sveltekit to performs and sveltekit to performs adapter. So save this and now refresh this. And now you should see the register form set up properly. And if I click on sign in, errors should pop up, and errors did not pop up. The reason for this would probably be because of the button is not of type submit. So let's see. Yeah, exactly. So we need to make this a type of submit for it to be able to take effect. Now check this again, and if I click on sign in, we have the error showing invalid email, and string must be at least 8 characters. Good. And we want to do the same thing for the lead. That will actually show a loading spinner. All of these things are the same things, are the same code. So that's why I'm just copying and pasting. And instead of having sign in right here, I'll cut that, paste this, and I'll paste sign in like this. And I'll also import loader as well, because loader is going to be from Lucid Svelte. So import that. And I'll save the whole thing so it formats properly. Nice. And yeah, this should throw an error when we try to register with an empty email, an empty password, or invalid credentials. Now, for the login action, we are first of all going to check if the email that user placed in exists in the database. So, if the email doesn't exist, then the user does not belong. So, let me know that the email isn't correct. And after we've checked the email, if the email was valid, if the email exists on the database, then would check if the password exists. So we are not actually taking the real password. We're going to take the password and then we are going to verify it with the password hash of that email that the user gave us. So he gave us an email, we got the user's row, and then we get the password hash, and then we verify it with the password that he imputed. And then if the password, if it's actually verified true, we let them log in. If not, we let them know that the password is invalid. And a real world application, you probably don't want to return the user which fields are incorrect. So when they register, we tell them that the email is incorrect, and then this now they know that oh, it's the email. And if they were trying to do something bad, like trying to get into the application or into someone else's account, now they know that okay, the password is probably correct, is the email. And then they type in the email and then we're telling them that the password isn't correct. Now they know that, oh, okay, that email is correct. Let's try to figure out the password. So you probably don't want to be doing that in a real world scenario, but because I want to be showing you exactly how to do that. That's why we're doing them in this manner. So go to the plus page.svelte or plus page.server.ts file, sorry. And create an action now, just very similar to the way we've created actions in the past. But now I'm going to be using the hit action. So to be faster, get rid of this part. We don't need this part. I'm going to be using a default action. So we have default, and it's going to be an async function. So async. And in here, we don't just be getting the request, but the cookies as well. So first of all, we want to get the form, and we want to make sure that form is valid. So we have an if block, just like we did last time. If this form dot valid is false, just want to return fail. Not this, I want to return fail, and fail is going to be from sveltekit. So make sure we import fail from sveltekit. The status is going to be 400, and we'll also return the form as well. Come out of there. What we want to do now is try to get the user where the email is the same as the email being imputed in the form or sent to the server, the action. I'll just right here say const and now the structure from the array user. So we get just one user. Since this is going to be returning for us a um an array, so I just want to get the first item. Let's say we await db. Make sure we import db. db is going to be from server slash auth or server slash db. db dot select. Right, we just want to select now dot from the users table. So use user table, and we can just import users table from the schema file that we defined it in. Dot where the use the equals utilities from Drizzel or RM. So basically, like the way we did it the last time, but this time we don't need to limit it to one, since we're only getting the first one, the instruction, and getting just the first one. So yeah, just like this, and we can check this user actually existed. So if the user did not exist, would return set error, and that's going to be from sveltekit superform. The set error. So what was the first argument of the form, the second the field, which is email, the third is the message. So no user with that email. You can write this email is incorrect. And outside of that, if you now want to use script, so scrypt would be equals to new script. Make sure that we import script from Lucia. Now we can just check if it's valid. Simply just using script dot verify, and replacing the user's password hash with the password that the user gave us. And if it was not valid, so what happened if it was not valid, we would basically just set an error to the password saying the password is incorrect. But if all of this was valid, we want to create a session and the session cookie, just like we did for the register. So I can go back to the register and copy this like this. And we want to import Lucia from Auth. And this time it's not going to be user ID, it's going to be user dot ID. And after all is done, we want to redirect to the home page. So 302, since this is from a form, action and then slash to signify the home page. Make sure that you import redirect properly. Now we can actually test this out. So make sure you save this. And right now we don't actually have what we'll use to um log out. So remember, we actually signed in right now, but we don't have what we use to log out. But we can actually just test this out with the credentials that we've registered with. So let's see the way this goes. I'll place in my email, and then I'll put in my password, and I'll sign in. As you can see for yourself, it works. So it checks that the user is correct and blah blah blah. And it signs us. But what if we placed in the wrong credentials, like put in wrong credentials? Let me place this in. This user isn't signed in, so isn't registered. Let's see. Actually, immediately tells us invalid email. It didn't even waste any time. But if we place in a correct email and the password was wrong, so I placed in the wrong password, try to sign in, tells us incorrect password straight away. So that's nice to see. But it's actually not good because now, as a malicious user, I know that, oh, this email is correct. I just have to try and guess the password. So you don't want to probably be doing this, telling them exactly which fields are wrong. But it's nice to know that you can do that. So what next I want to do is to actually protect pages. Like for example, when we are registered, when we are signed in, we shouldn't be able to access the login and register page. It doesn't make any sense for those pages to be accessible anymore, except we log out. And if we are not registered, we should not be able to access the home page because that page is only for registered authenticated users. So from the next part, we are going to actually take care of that. This series is a two-part video. So we're going to be ending this one right here. And then on the next part, we'll pick up from protecting our pages and actually doing the post and all the stuff and actually completing the project. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this project. If you don't want to wait for the next part, like if you're impatient, I have the link to the GitHub down in the description. You can go and get it and read the code if you want. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next part. Thank you all. Peace.